Welcome to the Cultivating Business Growth Podcast, bringing you bi-weekly discussions designed to help you grow your business and create the lifestyle you desire. Elevate your business with proven strategies from virtual CFOs, CPAs, and business advisors. We discuss real-world challenges solved with actionable steps that get you the results you need both in business and building the life you deserve.
Thank you for joining us for episode number 165 of the Cultivating Business Growth Podcast, brought to you by Willow Virtual CFO. Today, we are tackling a challenge that every business owner dreads, hitting a financial plateau. If you're feeling stuck right now, this episode is for you, and we're going to help you work on getting out of that. So to help me tackle that, I have Katina Peters here, Virtual CFO, CPA, and partner here at Willow Virtual CFO. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks, Megan. Appreciate you having me as always.
Yeah. So we're talking about some challenging times here, and we want to help business owners get out of that, what can feel like you're stuck, like just spinning your wheels in this frustrating portion of owning a business. And everybody's been there. But we really want to help you get out of that stuck feeling in today's episode. So we want to help outline some strategies to identify the cause of stagnation and give you some actionable steps to overcome it and get out of it. So let's start with number one. How do you even start to get out of this?
Yeah, I think probably as with lots of things, the first step is to recognize that there's a problem, right? So let's first do that, and hopefully as soon as possible recognize that there's a problem, right? We talk a lot about keeping up on our financials, our budgets, our KPIs, things like that. So there definitely can be early signs of things that are, like you said, plateauing, decreasing, et cetera. So, first kind of recognizing that if you feel like your revenue is just not growing like it used to, or perhaps it's even declining, that's a sign. So you want to watch that. You want to know, whether it's just seasonality, whether, there's something else that's creating it, but just kind of keeping an eye on those types of things. Looking at your acquisition rates of customers or clients, is that keeping pace, is that kind of following your norm and your historical, or those KPIs decreasing? Again, you have to be monitoring those types of things to know for sure if something's going wrong or not. So you want to definitely look at that. And also just retention of customers or client. Are you retaining them? Is your retention rate holding? Is it, getting worse, for some reason, those kinds of things. So looking at that, and just, also just kind of watching that bottom line on your P&L. Are your expenses going up, but your revenue's not keeping up for some reason? We're not hitting our budget projections, those kinds of things. So looking at it first, recognizing, okay, there's something going on, there's something that's a problem, and depending on where you're seeing the issue, that's going to help you, right, hone in on what is maybe the potential cause of that happening. So we're going to talk about a couple of common causes, but again, I think firstly, just recognizing, okay, we have an issue, we're recognizing it early, hopefully, if we're doing the things that we need to be doing as business owners so that we can tackle it more proactively and not in a like a scramble mode, but hopefully in a way that we can give it some time, because these are things that a lot of times do take time to resolve and to reroute if we need to reroute. So,
yeah. And I think what you said there too is that you have to be tracking it and paying attention to it, because it is easy as a business owner to get stuck in the day-to-day of, giving your clients what they need and answering all the questions, and you're stuck in email and all those things. And if your head is in the sand and you're not looking ahead at financials or your cash flow or whatever it is to see it coming early, mm-hmm. it does become that scramble, and then you're not making the best decisions because you're just panicked and stressed and all the right. things that make our decision making center in the brain not work as well as it should.
Yeah, exactly. And you just have to make time for those things. I mean, sometimes they can feel tedious and monotonous. So you just see the report, looks fine, looks fine. But it's when when there's a little something that doesn't quite look fine, that's when it's very useful, especially to make sure that, you're paying attention. Definitely.
Yeah.
So some of the common causes can be market saturation, in what you're doing or how you're doing it. Sometimes it's more of a how you're doing it, and you have to look at maybe being more inventive and creating different solutions, helping yourself stand out from the competition, those types of things. You can also look obviously at diversifying, what your offerings are altogether potentially, or who your targets are, if you maybe need to shift that. You can, definitely have issues with things that are maybe inefficient systems or operations. And that's something that, yes, it affects the business, right? You always want things to be as efficient as possible, save on costs, things like that. But maybe also is impacting your customer or client service, and they're feeling like, this is not efficient, takes forever, whatever the case may be, or they're not getting good communication out of it on regular touch points, something like that. So maybe it's you're not maybe retaining people like you were before because of how the system is operating, that it's not kind of keeping up with the times, or something along those lines. So it can definitely affect that. Also can affect maybe, acquisition, as well as, of course, what people might be saying about you out in the world, in the sphere of where you're trying to attain clients or customers too, that may be impacting things. So,
Right.
but that's definitely a common cause there. It's always something we have to keep an eye on. So we talked about lack of innovation, outdated offerings, and I already kind of mentioned that. But yeah, those things you have to kind of, stay on the forefront of as you go through your SWOT analysis, like we've talked about, your strategic planning, thinking through those opportunities, making sure that, you're staying up to date with mostly with what your customers or clients' needs are, right? And what they're looking for, and, how they're used to operating. And I know we've talked a lot about, people are used to a lot of online shopping and things like that now, and how, not every business is exactly attuned to that, especially in the service-based businesses, which we are in and work with. But how do we utilize similar things in our businesses to attract and retain people, so that they're getting kind of those same options to be more efficient with their own time, and looking at things online, and getting the information they need that way? Are we, kind of keeping up with those types of things? I think that's a big one these days, for sure. So, then the other thing is can be leadership burnouts, lack of vision for the next phase. I think those kind of go hand in hand, really. I would say, I think that, sometimes that lack of vision can come from leadership being burnt out, not maybe doing a great job of structuring underneath them, delegating things down. As we've talked before, you have to have space for creativity. And so, yes, we are accountants. We're not necessarily known for our creative juices, but there's definitely creativity even in accounting and strategic planning for any business. But you have to make space for it. If you're running on the wheel, and you're not stopping, and you have to let your mind, think about things. You have to let it just gel. And if you're just constantly running, you're just not even allowing yourself any space for that creative thinking. So you definitely have to make the space for that, even when it seems difficult to do, because that's where this innovation comes from. That's where the new vision. Okay, if you constantly feel overwhelmed and looking back and trying to keep up, you don't have the brain space and energy to look forward, and where are we going, and what's the next good thing. So just making sure that we are making space for that, for sure.
Yeah. And that mindset is huge, because the emotional impact of feeling stagnant or feeling stuck or feeling like you don't know how to get out of this hole can lead to the burnout too.
True.
Right. Because it just becomes exhausting at a certain point. And depending on how long you've been in business, it just, it's going to wear on you. You're a human. So I want to take a minute and just talk about the emotional impact of all of this too, and why it's important to have a game plan, because everybody at some point is likely going to hit this.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think it's as everybody knows, there's life phases in a business, in a person's life, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is just really, honestly, part of it. I would be surprised if you, as a business owner, don't go through this at some juncture or another.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty normal, and it can, it can feel, like you said, very discouraging. You can, have a lot of fear around it sometimes. I mean, this is something that you've worked really hard on. Of course, it's your business. You likely employ people, you worry about them, you feel the responsibility for them as well, things like that. So I think that one of the things that is good to do is to just step back and know that you've gotten really far with your business, right? If you're at this point where you've been growing and you're hitting a plateau, that means you've gotten pretty far. So look back at, what you've accomplished. And there's a lot, I'm sure, that you've learned along the way, as we all do. Hopefully that's, the ongoing status of life is to continue to learn, but just look back at okay, I can do this. We can do this as a company. We need to step back. We need to look at the big picture. We need to figure out where the issues are coming from and tackle it. But I think that if we get in a place too much of fear and overwhelm, we don't do anything. We just get stuck and freeze, So I feel like we gotta make sure we just step back and be like, okay, we can do this. We have to break it down into its parts. We have to make an action plan, take action, test it out, things like that. So I think, it's just one of those things. And I think it's great too to have good advisors that you can go talk to about these types of things, mentors, that you've either worked with, or maybe there's an association that has some people that have been through these types of things. And, so opening yourself up to being able to have some input from people who have been through similar situations. So I think that's another thing to really tap into. It can feel very lonely, when you're dealing with these types of things and feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders for this business and your family and the people who work for you, et cetera. But there's all kinds of support out there in your advisors, in your networks, things like that. So definitely reach out and look for those types of support, because I think there's a lot of people out there that love to help, for sure. So
yeah, I would agree with that. Those are great suggestions. And if we're feeling like we're in this, it can be easy to just kind of jump to, oh, I need to find a solution. Let's start doing things to see if it fixes the problem. Yes. But there's often a step that we kind of miss when we are operating out of that fear. Oh my gosh, just do something, which is better than freezing.
Yes,
right? At least we're doing something, but it's better to be a little more strategic and maybe find the root cause of what's happening first before we just start throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah. And sometimes there's time, or sometimes it's good to be doing something, if you have a team with you that they can start doing something while you do some more looking at, the root cause too. So you can always kind of tackle it from both sides. I mean, depending on how, your situation is. Yeah. If it's like you really need to have some, action happening to just see if something sticks, you can do that, but you don't want to be in that phase of just throwing stuff out there and seeing what sticks forever. You can do a little bit of that, but you need to definitely come back to, what is the root cause is and how do we resolve that as far as that goes. So when you're diagnosing these types of things, you want to look at, again, we mentioned the key metrics, but you want to do a deep dive, analyze those metrics, look at the financials, look at the story they're telling you, lean in again into your financial advisors, so CPAs, CFOs, CFO, whoever it might be, to help tell the story of what's going on from those financials, because that's, why they're valuable. Looking at KPIs like customer lifetime value, acquisition costs for new customers or clients, profit margins on them, see what's going on, pick out, it helps you also analyze maybe which business lines are doing best, which types of customers are best for your business. Maybe you've started to slide into some customers that are, not the best match for your business for some reason, things like that. So really looking at those. Getting feedback, always a great thing to do. We survey our customers especially if we're not doing it on a regular basis. But if we are doing that, looking at those results, making sure we're paying attention to those. But also, sometimes if they're getting regular surveys, they kind of start ignoring them. I think that happens for sure. So, reaching out to customers directly, saying, hey, we wanted to check in and see how this is going for you. We're just, we like to step back and look at our service, make sure it's meeting people's needs, make sure that they're getting the value and that they're happy, things like that. So reaching out, sometimes that's a little more tedious, but if you really want to get to the core of this problem, sometimes that's what you have to do, is just really pick up the phone and start talking to people about what's going on. And that includes not only your customers, also your team. Yeah. You're targeting your team. Sometimes teams aren't the best always at saying, hey, you ask them and they're like, oh yeah, I've noticed this and that's been a problem. And
that's been going on for 6 months. Yeah.
Nobody's saying anything. And sometimes it just takes that direct question, what are they seeing that's causing delays, inefficiencies, bottlenecks, communication problems, whatever the case may be, because that could be, part of it. And, this sounds like a lot, and it is a lot of data, a lot of information, but you gather it all and then start, looking for what are the things that are creating the overarching problem. So, and all this data can be helpful in different ways, but, right now we're focusing on how do we improve this plateau situation. So we may save some of the data for later, not the things that we want to do, but we're going to, filter through it, hone in on the things that we really want to fix in order to get out of that plateau situation, for sure. So, all right. And some of that, as you're going, also just stepping back, we talked about looking at your offerings, current market demands, new ways of doing things, et cetera. So, and, always good to kind of keep an eye on your competitors, do a little looking around. Maybe they're doing something different. Not that you have to copy them, but, they might be seeing something in the market that you're not seeing, that maybe open your eyes to it. If that's the case, things like that, always good to kind of just see what's going on so that you know how you can make your business the best that it can be. I think I'm a true believer in that. I think every business has its fit for customers, and they're not all the same. And because customers aren't all the same, businesses aren't all the same. So even if you do something that somebody else does, there's going to be that core of people and your target, and that just works better with you. So it doesn't necessarily matter that there's other people out there doing it. There's an abundance of people that need services, and they're not going to be the same people that mesh up with the guy down the street that's doing the same thing. It's just the way it is. So
100%. All right. So once we have our data, we've collected this feedback, and we're looking at the market and all of these things. We've kind of identified, okay, I'm seeing a trend here. This is where we want to focus our energy. What are some strategies that we can focus on to break out of the plateau?
So I think there's several here that we're going to go over, but one of those things is looking at that core audience. And we've mentioned that a couple of times. Like, first of all, looking at your ideal customer profile, and is that still the right fit for the business first? You want to you don't want to just assume anything. You want to step back and reassess these things, so, and maybe it totally still is the right fit, but you need to step back and ask those questions. And looking at that and tweaking that, is something changed that needs to be changed for your profile to be either better suited to the people that you're serving. Maybe your profile is a little off, or maybe it just has shifted and changed, and now it's really just a different profile that you're looking at. So you want to make sure you're considering that. Focusing in, like we talked about, some of these metrics and looking at profitability per customer or client, things like that, maybe focusing in on those high value, high use case clients where, maybe sometimes they're high value, sometimes they're just really good fits. Like their personality is really good. They always have great things to say about you and your staff. They're, those types of things. Like, what are those people, and how do we find more of those people, right? So focusing in on how do we do that, and then also, are we doing everything we can do for those people? Like, is there other things that we're missing the boat on. And I'm not a believer of straying, like, you can't be everything to everybody, but you have to stick to your core of what you do. But, there may be things, opportunities that you're missing that, these clients have changed, and maybe you didn't realize that they could be using some other service of yours that, they just don't know about or what have you. So making sure that you're considering that as well. So, okay. So again, we talked about innovation, expanding offerings. So looking at your current offerings and adding maybe some complementary products or services that still align with your business and what you're trying to be. Again, we don't want to like stray so far away, because we won't want to get into a situation where we're doing worse because we're trying to do too many things either.
Right.
We want to make sure it's good and complementary, but there are definitely things that you can look at there to add and expand service offerings as it makes sense to do so. You can look at how you structure bundling services or different pricing models and options. Maybe, that would be a little more friendly to how people currently like to buy things. Maybe it's more of a subscription model. It just depends on what type of business you are. But it's always good to look at how you're doing things. And again, kind of lead back to that. Okay, is this, why are we doing it this way? Does it make sense still to do it this way or not? What are the things that are happening out there that maybe we should consider doing differently from a pricing and bundling and how we're selling our service perspective? So,
No, that's great.
Let's see what else. Optimizing operations, always an ongoing process, especially with technology changes and things that we have to keep up with as business owners. But, things that we can automate, touch points with our customers, repetitive, and not to say that we want it to be so automated they don't feel like they ever talk to a real person, but things that we can just make sure that we're keeping a connection and giving them something beneficial, there. And sometimes that might be automating, even to the point of just setting up a reminder to maybe that account rep, hey, you need to talk to these people. We haven't talked to them for, a quarter, whatever it might be. So, those things as well. So any streamlining in processes, like we talked about, where especially is your customer or client feeling the inefficiencies that might be causing some problems? That's probably the one to focus on here. I mean, we always want to streamline our operations and efficiencies, profitability, but, as far as getting past the plateau, it's what things are affecting our customers or clients and our ability to get past that plateau. Marketing strategy, of course, I guess that's a big one. We didn't even talk really totally about yet, which is probably a real big one actually for a plateau in a business, is all these things that we just talked about. Yes, you have a new offering, or you have a new innovation, or you have a new whatever, or, you just need to do a better job expanding services. All that comes back to your marketing strategy, right? So you have to definitely look at revamping your marketing strategy, whether or not your strategy is good, but it doesn't include these other new things, and you need to revamp it for that. Or maybe you need to just revamp the marketing strategy because it's just not reaching the right people. It's not getting you the right leads. It's, or enough leads or what have you. So doing things like that to revamp what you're doing to get more of the people that you're trying to reach and help. Right. So, that can come with an investment. Sometimes you invest in more assistants or other platforms to use. Again, back to the technology side of things, is there a better platform for us to be marketing to people, getting social media out there, et cetera? So marketing is definitely a big one there. And kind of, I guess, dovetailing, going hand in hand with marketing is leveraging any strategic partnerships. So it's kind of like a little offshoot of marketing, right? So making sure that we're doing what we can to leverage those strategic partnerships, whether it's people that are in services that complement the service that we do, and we can do some good cross referrals or joint, events or webinars or, marketing campaigns or something like that. And there's definitely a lot of power that can come through that as well. And, whether, I guess, affiliate programs, that's kind of similar, right? Having maybe an affiliate program put together. So leveraging those and looking at those relationships and maybe building some if you don't have them or they've gotten stale and you haven't kept up those relationships. Sometimes that can happen as you get busy in the business, right? For sure. So kind of getting those things up and going there. And then also looking at, is your team happy, and investing in your team, because especially in our business, right? Our businesses, service-based businesses, are driven by the teams. The teams are not happy and doing well and those types of things. It can absolutely impact our customers or clients and how they're feeling about the service that they're receiving. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that morale, are things going well on that side? And also asking our team members and empowering them to contribute ideas. More brains the better, right? Things like that. What ideas do they have? Maybe they're seeing people are asking them questions and, are asking for things that they may have some inputs into this as well. So empowering them for that too.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel like those are some really good actionable steps that you can take today to start honing in on, okay, how are we going to get ourselves out of this? And the last thing that we want to wrap up here is to cover some tools and resources for you if you're feeling like you're in this spot. Because we want to give you everything that we can to try to help you. In addition to all of the information that we're giving you, we want you to have some other resources to be able to go and get additional information.
Yeah. Great. Perfect. Yeah. I think we've got 3 really good ones, and we've touched on pieces and parts of these already, but we're going to go back over them. So some financial planning tools that can be super helpful. If you don't, or you haven't got a budget together, or if you don't have a good forecasting model built for your business, these things can be very helpful and motivational, because as you're plugging in things, okay, well, what if I did this? What does that outcome look like? Or what if we did that? How does this, play in? You can see like the outcome. If you have a good forecast model, you can see the outcome of those choices going into like reality, for what that would mean for the business and its financial growth and stability and profitability, et cetera, which, that is, it's very powerful. I've worked with a lot of clients, and, they don't know what they're missing because they've never had that before. And when we build it and then we start using it and looking at it, a lot of times, sometimes monthly, sometimes quarterly, it depends on the circumstances. But when we're looking at those things and we're like, okay, we're going to hire these people and we're going to look to sell this much more, and this is what we think is achievable and attainable and all those things, and you plug all those things in and you have a good model put together, and it kind of spits out. It's like, oh my goodness, if we do this, we can hit this much revenue growth this year. We can hit this much profitability, and this is what our cash flow could be. And those kinds of things, that's very motivational to people, business owners, because, it's just like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. Like, do they in some way know? Of course, in some way, if you get more customers, you're going to grow, and, things like that. But when you see it, in black and white, as they say, it can definitely make a big difference and a big impact. And it becomes a really good tool too, to watch those decisions come into play and making sure that things are lining out the way that we expected them to as well. Okay. And then also our growth frameworks, like we talked about, the SWOT analysis, EOS systems and things like that, where you're setting your rocks and you're accomplishing your rocks and all of that. Those are huge. So again, I mentioned SWOT analysis before. If you're hitting a financial plateau, it's a great time to stop and do a SWOT analysis. What are we good at? What's our weaknesses? What's going on? So we can just stop and brainstorm about the business in general, because that, again, could bring up issues that we didn't know existed. So it's a great time to bring that out and relook at it.
Yeah. And we do have episode number 15 where we cover SWOT analysis in its entirety. We have a really good deep dive. If you want to go back and listen to episode 15, 15, that sounds so early. But go back to that episode, and we do a great breakdown of how you could do that for your business if you haven't done one.
Yes, perfect. Yeah. So, and having those operating systems like EOS or something similar is really the tool to obtain what you're trying to get to, right? It's setting those KPIs, it's setting those goals, not into just goals out in the sky, but into weekly, monthly things that you're going to achieve and work towards to get where you need to go. So those are going to be super useful and needed in this circumstance for sure. And professional support. So we talked a lot about that from the emotional side, consulting with your advisors. If you don't have a CFO, look at getting a virtual CFO or someone that can help with how do I approach this? How do I look at this and understand it better and figure out where to go? They can, you are of course always going to know your business the best, but they're going to be in a position to be able to ask you questions that you didn't even think of and that can spur this to go in the right direction because they've got the experience working through those types of things. So they're going to ask you questions that you may not be asking yourself. Maybe partially because you sometimes don't want to ask yourself those questions. So ask the hard questions too, but also just questions you're like, oh, I never thought of that, so those types of things. So, that can be also business coaches, financial advisors to a certain extent, depending on the type of financial advisor as well. So any of those types of things. Again, you can tap into networking groups and associations as well, but just looking for support around that so that you can, keep that going. Also can just re-energize you, remotivate you as a business owner too, just from a personal, emotional perspective. Just having those conversations helps, get past that, oh, I'm all alone and I don't know what to do. And, those types of feelings as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to just recap, what we covered today. We had some really great identifiers of, how do we recognize that we're in a plateau? We diagnose the root cause. We're implementing those growth strategies, those actionable steps that you can take, and then obviously leveraging those resources, those great resources that you just provided. As we wrap up the episode for today, is there anything that you want to leave listeners with?
I think just know if you're in this situation or you see it coming, just know that you've built something great already and you have it. You can go through and you can get to the next level. You just got to step back and take some of these steps and you're going to get there. So just keep going.
That's great. And as a reminder, we do offer a free discovery call for you if you want to sign up at willowvirtualcfo.com/contact. You can do that there. Or send us an email at info@willowvirtualcfo. So keep that momentum going and we will see you next time.